My parents spent my entire life ignoring me to worship my sister's natural musical genius, but I just found the proof that it was all a lie. In this story of family betrayal, it turns out every hit song she ever released was stolen from our dead father's private journals, and I was determined to get justice, so I'm about to make sure the world knows the truth. My name is Maya Wright. For 30 years, I have lived in the shadow of a monument built on fraud. If you follow pop culture, you know my sister, Chloe Wright. She is the golden girl of the singer-songwriter world, the prodigy who swept the Grammys at 22, the woman whose lyrics about heartbreak and existential longing have been tattooed onto the skin of thousands of adoring fans. But if you know me, you probably only know me as Chloe's sister, the nondescript woman in the background of the paparazzi photos, holding her purse or opening her car door. Or, if you are in the industry, you know me as the Iron Scout, the head of A&R for one of the largest record labels in the country. I earned that title through blood, sweat, and tears, clawing my way up from the mailroom while my sister was carried to the top on a sedan chair of lies. To understand why I did what I did, you have to understand the house we grew up in. It was a home where silence was considered a sin, but only if that silence wasn't being filled by Chloe. Our father, Thomas, was a quiet man. He was a music teacher at the local community college, a gentle soul who smelled of old sheet music and rosin. He spent his evenings in the study, doors closed, playing the piano softly. It was never for an audience, it was his meditation. My mother, Elena, was the opposite. She was a failed actress, a woman who looked at her children not as people to be nurtured, but as lottery tickets to be scratched. I was the losing ticket. I had no rhythm, I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. When I was 7, I tried to learn the violin. After 2 weeks of screeching, my mother took the instrument from my hands, put it back in the case, and said, "Maya, honey, let's not embarrass ourselves anymore. You have other strengths. Maybe you can be a manager someday." Then there was Chloe. Chloe, who was 2 years younger, had the voice of an angel and the moral compass of a shark, though we didn't know that part yet. She sat at the piano one day when she was 10 and plinked out a melody. My mother gasped. She declared it a sign from God. From that moment on, the entire household orbit shifted. Everything was for Chloe. The budget for groceries was slashed so Chloe could have vocal coaches. My college fund was drained to pay for studio time for her demos. I remember one specific Christmas. I was 16. I had asked for a laptop to help with my schoolwork, as I was aiming for a scholarship since my college fund was gone. Chloe wanted a vintage Fender Stratocaster. On Christmas morning, I unwrapped a sweater and a set of pens. Chloe unwrapped a guitar that cost more than my first car. My father looked at me with sad, apologetic eyes, but he didn't say anything. He never stood up to my mother. He just retreated to his study and played his piano. The dynamic was set. I was the invisible support staff. Chloe was the star. I learned to make myself small so she could have more room to shine. I cooked dinner while Mom drove Chloe to auditions. I helped Chloe with her homework so she could practice scales. I was the audience of one, clapping in the living room while she preened and posed. The turning point in our family history and the seed of the betrayal happened 5 years ago. Our father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. It was devastating. He was the only person in that house who had ever looked at me with genuine affection, even if he was too weak to protect me. I was shattered. I spent weeks in a fog of grief. My mother and Chloe, however, grieved differently. They grieved the loss of income, as Dad's pension was modest, but mostly they worried about the trajectory. Chloe was 19 then, on the verge of her big break, but she was stuck. She had the voice, she had the look, but the industry kept telling her the same thing. Her songs were generic. They lacked depth. They lacked soul. I remember sitting in the living room 3 months after the funeral. I was organizing the condolence cards, trying to keep busy. Chloe was throwing a tantrum on the sofa. She had just been rejected by a major indie label. "They say I don't have a story," she screamed, throwing a pillow across the room. "They want pain. They want complexity. I'm 19, Mom. What am I supposed to write about?" "We'll figure it out, baby," Mom soothed her, glaring at me as if my shuffling of papers was the reason Chloe wasn't famous yet. True genius takes time. A week later, the miracle happened, or so they called it.
If you are enjoying this story, please like and subscribe. Also, please comment, as your feedback helps to improve the stories coming.
Chloe emerged from her room with a song called Midnight Rain. She played it for us on the acoustic guitar. It was haunting. The lyrics spoke of a love that was silent, a grief that lived in the walls of a house, a man who spoke through melodies because words failed him. It was beautiful. It made me cry. "I didn't know you felt that way about Dad," I whispered, wiping my eyes. Chloe looked at me, her eyes hard and flat. "It's art, Maya. It's not a diary. You wouldn't understand the creative process." Midnight Rain was the song that got her signed. It went viral. It hit the top 10.
Critics praised her as an old soul, a prodigy of sorrow. Then came the album. Every track was a masterpiece of lyrical complexity. The silent waltz, echoes in the hallway, faded ink. She was hailed as the voice of a generation. I moved out shortly after her first tour started.
I couldn't stand being the maid in the mansion her success bought. I needed my own life. I moved to the city, got a tiny apartment with 3 roommates, and started interning at a record label. I didn't use my sister's name. I wanted to make it on my own. I worked 18-hour days. I fetched coffee, I organized files, I scouted dive bars at 2 a.m. looking for bands, and I discovered something about myself. I had an ear. I couldn't play and I couldn't sing, but I could hear greatness. I could tell the difference between a catchy hook and a timeless melody. I could spot the fake artists from the real ones. Over the next 5 years, I rose through the ranks.
I became an A&R representative, then a senior scout, and finally the director of talent for Verve Records. I discovered 3 platinum-selling artists. I built a reputation as the Iron Scout, the woman who could smell a lie a mile away, who negotiated hard, and who protected her artists fiercely. Meanwhile, Chloe became a superstar. We rarely spoke. When we did, it was usually Mom calling to demand why I wasn't using my industry connections to get Chloe better magazine covers or better playlist placements. "She's on a rival label, Mom," I would explain patiently. "I can't just call Spotify and demand favors for a competitor's artist. That's not how it works." "You're just jealous," Mom would spit into the phone. "You've always been jealous of her gift. You should be grateful she's keeping the family name in lights while you push papers." I stopped going home for holidays. I focused on my career. I built my own empire, brick by brick. But there was always something that nagged at me about Chloe's music. Whenever her songs came on the radio, I felt a strange sense of déjà vu. The chord progressions, the specific phrasing of the lyrics, it felt like a memory I couldn't quite place. I attributed it to the fact that we grew up in the same house. Maybe we just had similar subconscious influences. The escalation began 6 months ago. Chloe's career had hit a plateau. Her second album had been a hit, but the critics were starting to turn. They were waiting for her mature era. She was under immense pressure to deliver a third album that would cement her legacy. She was struggling. The muse had apparently left the building. I ran into her at the Grammys. I was there with my top artist, a young R&B singer named Davina. We were celebrating Davina's nomination for Best New Artist. I looked good. Tailored tuxedo, hair slicked back, confident. I wasn't the invisible sister anymore.
Chloe approached me at the after-party. She looked thin, brittle. Her eyes were manic. Mom was trailing behind her, holding her glass of champagne like a weapon. "Maya," Chloe said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, "I barely recognized you. You look professional." "Hello, Chloe." "Mom," I nodded. "Congratulations on the nomination." "It's just a nomination." Chloe waved a hand dismissively, though I knew she was seething that she hadn't won Record of the Year. Listen, Maya, I'm working on the new album. It's going to be revolutionary, but I need a fresh perspective. I was thinking you could come by the studio, give it a listen, maybe offer some of that Iron Scout advice. I was surprised. Chloe never asked for my opinion. You have a whole team for that, Chloe, and a producer. They're yes men, she snapped, the mask slipping. I need real feedback. Come on, for Dad? That manipulation tactic always worked. Fine, send me the files. When I listened to the demos she sent a week later, I was confused. They were terrible. Not just mediocre, they were bad. Clunky lyrics, derivative melodies. It sounded like a high schooler trying to imitate her previous hits. I called her. Chloe, these aren't ready. The lyrical depth you usually have isn't there. She exploded. You just want me to fail. You're trying to sabotage me because you know I'm the star. She hung up. 2 weeks later, she released a single called The Dusty Key. It was a masterpiece, intricate, heartbreaking, musically complex, and completely different from the demos she had sent me. It was like 2 different people had written them. I was baffled. How did she go from those garbage demos to The Dusty Key in 14 days? The answer came to me in the most unexpected way. My mother called me last month. She was selling the childhood home. She wanted to move into a condo closer to Chloe's estate in Los Angeles. You need to come clear out your father's study, she said cold. I'm throwing everything out on Friday. If you want any of his old junk, come get it. I canceled my meetings and drove 4 hours to my hometown. Walking into that house was like walking into a mausoleum of my own unhappiness. Mom was already packing boxes, barking orders at movers. Chloe wasn't there. She was too busy being famous. I went straight to Dad's study. It was exactly as he had left it. Dust motes danced in the light filtering through the heavy curtains. The piano sat in the corner, silent. I started packing books, old biographies of composers, music theory textbooks. Then I tackled the closet. It was filled with boxes of tax returns and old clothes. I dragged a heavy trunk out from the back of the closet. It was locked. Mom, do you have the key to this trunk? I yelled down the hall. Just break it open or throw it out, she yelled back. I found a screwdriver and pried the lock open. Inside, the smell of old paper and leather hit me. It wasn't clothes, it was journals. Dozens of them. Black moleskin notebooks dating back 30 years. I opened the one on top. It was dated from 1998, the year I was born. My father's handwriting was neat, slanted. He wrote about his day, his frustrations with teaching, but mostly he wrote music. There were pages and pages of sheet music, hand-drawn staves, lyrics scribbled in the margins. I turned a page, and my heart stopped. There, written in ink that had faded slightly with time, were the lyrics, "The rain falls at midnight, washing the sins from the street. I stand at the window, watching the 2 worlds meet." I froze. I knew those words. Everyone in the world knew those words. It was the opening verse of Midnight Rain. I flipped through the book frantically. I found The Silent Waltz. I found Echoes in the Hallway. I grabbed another journal from 2005. There was faded ink. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the book. I sat on the floor, surrounded by the evidence of a lifetime of theft. I opened the most recent journal, the one dated just weeks before he died. On the last few pages, under the heading Ideas for the Winter, was the entire composition for The Dusty Key. I felt sick, physically ill. My sister hadn't just stolen a song, she had stolen his soul. She had raided his private thoughts, his life's work, the music he was too shy to share with the world, and she had claimed it as her own. She had built a career, a fortune, a reputation as a genius on the back of a dead man she barely paid attention to when he was alive. And my mother, she had to know. There was no way she didn't know. Chloe couldn't have found these without Mom knowing. I took out my phone. I didn't call them. I didn't scream. I became the Iron Scout. I took high-resolution photos of every page. I found a box of old cassette tapes at the bottom of the trunk. I found an old cassette player in the desk drawer. I put in a tape labeled Ideas 2010. I pressed play. Dad's voice, raspy and warm, filled the room. He was humming a melody, then singing softly. It was the chorus of Chloe's Grammy-winning song, Shattered Glass. "This needs a cello," he muttered on the tape. "Maybe a minor third in the bridge." I packed everything. Every journal, every tape. I carried the heavy trunk out to my car myself, bypassing the movers. "Did you get what you wanted?" Mom asked as I walked past her in the hallway. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Yes," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I got exactly what I wanted. Goodbye, Mom." I drove back to the city in silence. I didn't listen to the radio. I formulated a plan. I could have gone to the press immediately. I could have posted the photos on Twitter. But that wasn't enough. That was too messy, and they would spin it.
They would say Dad wrote them for her. They would say they were co-writers. They would gaslight the world just like they gaslighted me. No, I needed to destroy the lie completely. I needed to make it irrefutable. I spent the next 2 weeks meeting with forensic musicologists and copyright lawyers. I played them the tapes, I showed them the journals, we authenticated the ink age, we verified the dates on the tapes. The evidence was overwhelming. Dad had written these songs decades before Chloe released them. Then, I waited for the perfect moment. It arrived in the form of the Legacy Gala, a massive industry event honoring the songwriters of the decade. Chloe was the guest of honor. She was set to receive the Golden Pen Award. The entire industry would be there, label heads, press, critics, peers. I was invited, of course, as a senior executive at Verve. I RSVP'd +1. My +1 was my lawyer. The night of the gala, I wore a red dress, not the black I usually wore to blend in. I wanted to be seen. I walked the red carpet, ignoring the reporters shouting questions about my sister. Inside, the ballroom was glittering. Chloe sat at the front table looking ethereal in white silk. Mom was next to her, beaming. They looked like royalty. I sat a few tables back. I texted the production manager, an old friend named Mike, who owed me a massive favor for saving his job 2 years ago. "We ready?" "Ready. Signal when." The ceremony began. Speeches were made, accolades were showered. Finally, the host announced the Golden Pen Award. And now, to honor a woman whose raw original talent has redefined a generation, a woman who writes from the deepest parts of her soul, Chloe Wright. The room erupted in applause. Chloe stood up, feigning humility, hand over her heart. She walked to the stage. She took the microphone. "Thank you," she breathed. "I am so humbled. You know, songwriting is a lonely journey. It's just you and the truth. When I wrote Midnight Rain, I was sitting in my room, staring at the storm, and I just felt—" I signaled Mike. Suddenly, the massive screen behind Chloe flickered. The Legacy Gala logo disappeared. In its place, a video began to play. It was a scan of a journal page. The date, October 14, 1998, was highlighted in red. The handwriting was unmistakable. The speakers crackled. And then, Dad's voice filled the ballroom. "The rain falls at midnight, washing the sins from the street." Chloe froze. She looked back at the screen, confused. The video cut to another page. April 3, 2005. Dad's voice again. "I'm walking through the hallway of echoes, trying to find a door that isn't closed." The room went deadly silent. The audio quality was unmistakably vintage, the hiss of the cassette tape echoing in the high-end sound system. Chloe laughed nervously into the mic. Is this a tribute? Did you guys find old tapes of Dad?" The video cut to a split screen. On the left, Chloe's release date for The Dusty Key, released last month. On the right, Dad's journal entry, dated 6 months ago, verified forensic analysis. Then the text appeared on the screen, large and white against a black background. All songs performed by Chloe Wright were written by Thomas Wright, 1965 to 2019, stolen from his private estate, uncredited, unauthorized. The murmur in the room turned into a roar. Chloe dropped the award. It hit the stage with a heavy thud. She looked like a deer in headlights. She looked at Mom. Mom was standing up, her face a mask of horror, not because of the theft, but because of the exposure. I stood up. I walked toward the stage. The crowd parted for me. I didn't look at them. I looked at my sister. I grabbed the microphone from the stand, right out of her trembling hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice calm, projecting to the back of the room. "My name is Maya Wright. I am the executor of the Thomas Wright estate, based on a will recently uncovered that names me the sole guardian of his artistic works." That was a little legal maneuvering I had finalized that morning. "The music you have celebrated for the last 5 years does not belong to the woman standing next to me. It belongs to a man who was too humble to seek fame, a man whose legacy was looted by the very people who were supposed to mourn him." I turned to Chloe. She was crying now, mascara running down her face. "Maya, please," she whispered, "don't do this." "You did this," I said, loud enough for the microphone to catch it. "You did this every time you accepted an award for words you didn't write. You did this every time you let Mom tell me I was talentless while you were parroting a dead man." I looked back at the audience. Effective immediately, the Thomas Wright estate is issuing cease and desist orders to Chloe Wright's label for all copyright infringements. We will be suing for retroactive royalties, damages, and fraud. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I dropped the mic. Literally. I walked off the stage and out of the ballroom. Behind me, chaos erupted. I could hear reporters shouting, camera flashes exploding like strobes. I heard Mom screaming my name, screeching like a banshee. I didn't stop walking until I got to my car. I sat in the driver's seat and exhaled a breath I felt like I'd been holding for 20 years. The fallout was nuclear. By the next morning, it was the #1 trending topic worldwide. Hashtag Chloe Wright fraud was everywhere. The side-by-side audio comparisons of Dad's tapes and Chloe's songs were viral on TikTok. The industry reacted swiftly. They hate being embarrassed. Chloe's label dropped her within 48 hours to avoid the liability. The Grammys issued a statement that they were reviewing the eligibility of her past wins. Her upcoming tour was canceled.
The legal battle was brutal but short. With the journals and the forensic dating, they didn't have a leg to stand on. Chloe settled. She had to pay back millions in royalties. She was stripped of her songwriting credits on all streaming platforms. Now, when you look up Midnight Rain on Spotify, the songwriter is listed as Thomas Wright. Chloe is bankrupt. Her reputation is incinerated. She tried to do an interview explaining that she channeled him, but the internet laughed her off the stage. She's currently living in a small apartment, selling influencer tea on Instagram to pay her legal bills. Mom tried to sue me for defamation. It didn't work. She's now ostracized from the social circles she desperately wanted to be part of. She calls me sometimes, leaving weeping voicemails about how I destroyed the family. I blocked her number last week. As for me, I'm doing just fine. I took Dad's journals and I finished the work. I hired real musicians, an orchestra, and the best vocalists in the industry, people who actually have soul. We recorded a tribute album, the Thomas Wright Sessions. It was released yesterday. It's already #1. The profits are going into a foundation I started in his name. It provides music lessons and instruments to underprivileged kids, kids who have talent but no support, kids who are ignored. I kept one thing for myself, though. I kept the piano. It sits in my living room now. I still can't play it very well, but sometimes, late at night, I sit there and I play a clumsy C major chord. And in the silence that follows, I don't feel like the invisible sister anymore. I feel like the daughter my father would have been proud of. Success is the best revenge? Maybe, but reclaiming the truth? That's the ultimate dish served cold. If you believe the truth always finds a way out, like the video and please comment and subscribe if you enjoyed the story and want more revenge stories where betrayal meets consequences.